Welcome to Community Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm Joyce Thompson, your worship associate today. We're happy to welcome our pastor, Kris Cervantes, back this morning to do the service. Recently, she took a road trip to the Big Bend area of West Texas, and on that trip, it turned out to be a little bit more exciting than she had planned. She says that she had a few long hours to think about mortality up close. Let's see what she learned.
Good morning. Our call to worship today is a poem, To the Desert, by Benjamin Alire Symes. I came to you one rainless August night. You taught me how to live without rain. You are thirst, and thirst is all I know. You are sand, wind, sun, and burning sky, the hottest blue. You blow a breeze and brand your breath into my mouth. You reach, then bend your force to break, blow, burn, and make me new. You wrap your name tight around my ribs and keep me warm. I was born for you. Above, below, by you surrounded. I wake to you at dawn. Never break your knot. Reach, rise, blow. Sálvame, mi Dios. Trágame, mi tierra. Salva, traga, break me. I am bread. I will be the water for your thirst. Amen. At this time, we will light our chalice together with a reading from Amy Carol Webb, written for this time. We light this flame for the art of sacred unknowing, humbled by all that we cannot fathom in this time. We come into the presence of what we do know, perhaps the only thing we will ever know, that love is now and forever, the only answer to everything and everyone in every moment. The chalice will remain lit throughout the service. And of course, you are always invited to light your own chalice at home.
Though we hold a variety of spiritual beliefs, we're united by a commitment to shared values and to each other. We renew that commitment every week by reciting our covenant aloud. Please join me in saying, love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, and to help one another.
Instructions, written by Neil Gaiman, illustrated by Charles Vess. Touch the wooden gate in the wall you never saw before. Say please before you open the latch. Walk down the path. A red metal imp hangs from the green painted front door as a knocker. Do not touch it. It will bite your fingers. Walk through the house. Take nothing. Eat nothing. However, if any creature tells you that it hungers, feed it. If it tells you that it is dirty, clean it. If it cries to you that it hurts, if you can, ease its pain. The deep well you walk past leads to winter's realm. There is another land at the bottom of it. If you turn around here, you can walk back safely. You will lose no face. I will think no less of you. Once through the garden, you will be in the wood. The trees are old. Eyes peer from the undergrowth. Beneath the twisted oak sits an old woman. She may ask for something. Give it to her. She will point the way to the castle. Inside it are 3 princesses. Do not trust the youngest. Walk on. In the clearing beyond the castle, the 12 months sit about a fire, warming their feet and exchanging tales. They may do favors for you if you are polite. You may pick strawberries in December's frost. Trust the wolves, but do not tell them where you are going. The river can be crossed by the ferry. The ferryman will take you. The answer to his question is this: if he hands the oar to his passenger, he will be free to leave the boat. But only tell him this from a safe distance. If an eagle gives you a feather, keep it safe. Remember that giants sleep too soundly, that witches are often betrayed by their appetites. Dragons have one soft spot somewhere always. Hearts can be well hidden, and you betray them with your tongue. Do not be jealous of your sister. Know that diamonds and roses are as uncomfortable when they tumble from one's lips as toads and frogs, colder too, and sharper, and they cut. Remember your name. Do not lose hope. What you seek will be found. Trust ghosts. Trust those that you have helped to help you in their turn. Trust dreams. Trust your heart, and trust your story. When you come back, return the way you came. Favors will be returned, and debts will be repaid. Do not forget your manners. Do not look back. Ride the wise eagle. You shall not fall. Ride the silver fish. You will not drown. Ride the gray wolf. Hold tightly to his fur. There is a worm at the heart of the tower. That is why it will not stand. When you reach the little house, the place where your journey started, you will recognize it, although it will seem much smaller than you remember. Walk up the path and through the garden gate you never saw before but once. And then go home, or make a home, or rest. The end.
Mitsu Bader passed away peacefully on June 26th in her home in Richardson, Texas. And Jody Reed lost a battle to several illnesses she had just on July 7th. We very much mourn both of these losses. Mitsu was an original founder of Community Church. There will be services scheduled for each of them in the future, and you can contact June Bruns to find out more. By D. Scott Cooper. We bow our heads in order to imagine not one path, but many. We imagine a path forward for those who cannot imagine any path forward because of poor health, financial hardship, family crises, and other roadblocks that we cannot begin to understand or imagine. We struggle to imagine a path forward for those who are forced to leave a homeland against their will, and for those unable to leave a war-torn homeland despite their lives being in danger. We imagine a path forward for those who leave their homes to make a better life for their families elsewhere. May we be a welcoming presence along that path toward hope. We come together to imagine a path forward for those of us despairing because we do not seem to know our country nor our neighbors, despite the fact we have not moved at all. May we be the good we are hoping to find as we travel side by side down the path toward hope.
I hit 0 on the tripometer and turned onto the road to Marathon at about 2:30 or 3 p.m. on Sunday afternoon a week ago. I've been camping in a fairly primitive site off Terlingua Ranch Road since Wednesday. I had an Airstream trailer to sleep in, but the site was off the grid in a big way. No water, no electricity, no plumbing, no nothing. No air conditioning, obviously. So every afternoon I would find something to do in the hellish hours between about 4 and 7 p.m. when it would begin to cool off with the approach of nightfall. Sometimes there'd be a passing thunderhead to help it along. Sunday afternoon I decided to take the dirt road from Terlingua Ranch to the small border town of Marathon, Texas. I thought I'd have a scenic drive and then do a little shopping and grab dinner and drive back either the same way or, if the dirt road was slow going, via a more roundabout road. Either way, I would be home in time for bed and to make a decision about whether I wanted to drive home to Waco on Monday, the next day, or Tuesday, as I had originally planned. On paper, I went solo camping in the Chihuahuan Desert as a way to disconnect and just think and read for just a while. I'm sure that none of you have noticed this, ha ha ha, but life has been a little stressful lately. Between global pandemics and national injustices, there's been some emotional wear and tear, you might say. So I told myself that a getaway would provide a reset, and I could use the time to meditate and read and write, play some music, maybe create some art, stargaze and hike and sleep really hard. And I did all those things. I clambered over rocks and sand. I fell down on my butt a couple of times and acquired various amusing bruises and scrapes. I used a camp stove to make coffee and a few other basics. I took some beautiful pictures. I wrote a lot. I read a lot. I wandered around the Terlingua Cemetery and swam in the Rio Grande. I waited out a dust storm in the Airstream. It was suffocatingly hot. And then I opened all the windows and waited out the rainstorm that came hard on its heels. I lay there reading on the bed in the blessed cool, with rain dripping off the windows and the desert exhaling a whole new scent around me. And as I did that, as I had all of these experiences, it slowly became clear to me that all I'd really done was run away. Here's what I wrote in my journal, a little bit. I had hoped that this trip would be a chance to really engage with my feelings, kind of dig deep, but so far, not so much. I'm curiously at a loss. I'm enjoying myself, but there's a sense of unreality to it, like I'm sort of avoiding reality. But this is reality too, isn't it? I don't think this has anything to do with the things that I am worried about. I mean, I can look at it through the lens of Black Lives Matter and wish that there was not such a sort of unfriendly environment for Black and Indigenous and people of color who are tourists, and also Asian folks. I think there's a really hostile, some very hostile conditions. And so it seems, almost to the end of what I wrote, like the least that I can do is acknowledge my privilege. So, back to my night in the desert. Around 4 p.m., I came around a curve in the road and my car lurched unexpectedly forward into a deep, powdery sort of sand pit. I was stuck. I looked at the tripometer, and this is true story, call it a sign. I was 26.2 miles down the road to Marathon. I was hubcapped deep in the road, it turned out, and I set out to dig. I didn't have my camp shovel, so I used my shoes. It was 106 degrees at that time by my car's reckoning, and although there was this ongoing throat clearing coming from a distant thunderstorm, the sun was beating down where I was. I had somehow managed to skid and slalom to a halt in the scrawny shade of a whitethorn acacia tree. Forgive me if I said that wrong. I've mostly just seen it written. But that did mean that I could dig in the shade on one side, which was nice. Inventory of the car showed I had almost 2 whole gallons of water, a spare pair of shoes, my shovels again, and a container of cookies. In addition, the car was running fine and I had half a tank of gas, which is like infinity gas in a Prius. Quick note about Priuses, I don't want to hear anything about it. I drove on dirt roads the entire time for 6 days before I got stuck, and it was great. So, it was a Prius. It was a bad luck thing. So the downsides of my situation were 0 signs of human existence except this line of telephone poles sort of marching across the desert. I knew that I had crossed onto the national park lands, but I also knew the road goes through there. But I also knew that all backcountry camping and roads are closed. So I still had the handout in my car from visiting the park 2 days before. And the third really bad thing was that there was no cell signal at all. I set my phone to SOS mode, which is what happens when you dial 911. And apparently that means it continuously tries to call for help. But the thing is, no signal is no signal. There's not much you can do. Nothing happened except the phone, for the next however long, displayed a little red SOS in the top left corner. The thunderstorm ended up drifting by about a half mile to the east, and I got enough trailing curtains of rain to cool things down and make my car look even dirtier. It was nasty. But it wasn't enough to firm the sand. By the time the storm had gone by, it was dark. I was exhausted and I was caked in powdery sand. I was very tense, far too tense to eat. I did have water, thank God, and I did drink some, but I could not, the whole night, I never forced down more than a bite or two of a cookie, one cookie. I'm pretty sure I was suffering from mild heat stroke. If nothing else, my salt balance was way off and I definitely felt wobbly. And like I said, tension and fear go straight to my tummy, and so that means everything shuts down when I'm scared. Low blood sugar was probably also not helping things. But I was safe. I could have closed all the windows and slept the car AC running, but instead I turned the car off and rolled the windows mostly down. I didn't fear the desert night. I knew I was safe from any reptiles who might have wanted to cuddle, and the night air was nice and cool. Summer in the desert is really bug-free at night unless you're down by the river. Other than some moss, I never saw a thing. I laid my seat back. I couldn't get out of the driver's seat, which seems strange, but it made sense at the time. And I used a towel as a blanket, a pillow, and then I would wrap it around as a blanket. I didn't need a blanket, it just felt nice. And I slept, fitfully but hard. I woke up once to answer nature's call, and then the rest of the time just from nerves and tension, and it wasn't the most comfortable bed. So there in the middle of the night, I occasionally honked my horn in an SOS pattern. Wow, it seemed so loud in that night. I would turn on my headlights and flash them in the pattern as well. Basically, all I did was scare the bejesus out of some desert animals, but none of them happened to be people. So it was a really long night. But of course, it was the solstice, so it was actually the shortest night. And I was thinking about that there in the dark of the car. I thought about being mad at myself for driving a Prius on a dirt road, but then I decided I didn't want to be mad at myself about that. The road to my campsite was twice as bad as most of the marathon road. I've been driving on dirt roads for days. This is just bad timing and a bad place. Honestly, I can't think of a car I've owned that wouldn't have gotten stuck in that sand. I've never owned a truck or SUV. It was bad. I thought that night about writing nice letters to my husband and sons, but I didn't, for the same reason that I couldn't take any pictures of my stuck car. It just was too real and too soon. I knew I could make it for several days just staying by the car, and I knew that staying by the car was a smart thing to do. Thought about other things I might try the next day. Maybe I could somehow build a fire. Walk back along the road, starting early, and hope my flip-flops didn't give out for the next 5 to 10 miles, the last gate I saw. I tried to write, couldn't. Tried to read, couldn't focus. Mostly when I woke up that night, I didn't think, very deliberately. Around 6 a.m., I emerged from the car. The sun was rising ahead and to my right. I took my phone and started walking forward just to look around the bend of the road, maybe take a picture of the gorgeous sunrise that was staining the sky. So I walked forward a couple of, 200 yards or so to the curve of the road and got a beautiful picture of the sky and the desert. The telephone poles were crossing the road just there, and as I walked back toward the car, I passed under a pole where three lines came together, and my phone rang in my hand. My trusty iPhone, dialing and redialing, picked up some faint signal from I don't know what, a little transponder on a telephone pole. And when I put the phone to my ear, I heard a woman's voice say, "Brewster County 911, what's your emergency?" So I told her in one long breath, "My name is Kris Cervantes, and I'm tracked 26.2 miles down to the Terlingua Ranch to Marathon Road from the Terlingua Ranch Road turnoff. I've been here for 14 hours. I just need somebody to get me out of this sand and back to pavement. My car is fine and I'm fine. I just need out of the sand." We managed to keep the line open for a while. It was a pretty rough signal. I had like one little square foot of space I could travel in. And finally it was dropped, but "We know right where you are," she told me, "and someone is coming." 3 hours later, someone got there. I was pretty far out. A kind and helpful deputy named Butch Street, who used my tow rope in his truck to pull the Prius backward out of the sand pit about 1/10 of a mile and onto firm ground. Once I got turned around, I drove myself 26.1 miles back to a paved road, with Butch somewhere behind me making sure I made it out okay. I'm sure that I've been closer to death in my life than I was a week ago, 2 weeks ago now. The fact that I used to jog on city streets pretty much guarantees it. But never have I felt more vulnerable, more alone. Never have I felt my own impotence as a single creature in an indifferent or even hostile environment. And what I kept repeating to myself that night in the car was, "I need someone else. I can't do this alone." That was my cri de coeur. That is why when Butch climbed out of his big old pickup truck, I was half laughing and half crying, wearing my mask, my hands clasped, almost serious, when I said, I'd really like to give you a hug, but I don't want to make you sick, so I won't, but I swear if you tell me your favorite beer, I'll get you a six-pack right now. He did not need a six-pack. He laughed. He said if I needed to, I could hug him, and I declined. He said, thank you. I was wearing my mask. He gave me a Gatorade and is now in my phone, Deputy Butch Street, my friend in law enforcement in Brewster County, which is larger than a good portion of New England. So that's one place in the world where I know one person. Not bad. When I left, I got back to my campsite, threw everything in the car in like, seriously, 45 minutes. I was packed, and I hit the road to make the 8-hour drive home to Waco. I talked to my husband. He knew I was okay because he gets alerts if you do one of those SOS. When you get back into text cell range, it sends a text to your emergency contact. So he knew I was okay though. But I was having just massive reaction, just emotional, and it was the release of all this fear that I had felt. I had not allowed myself to freak out. I cried a little bit. I got mad and like threw a rock at a cactus at one point. Not helpful and not nice, but I probably missed it because who am I? It was hard. And so driving home, I would be driving along. Of course, I was also still kind of suffering from, I was trying to rehydrate. I still couldn't eat very much. It was a mess. I was a mess. But I kept driving, and all of a sudden, I'd be thinking about something completely unrelated. Oh, look at those elk over there, or whatever, you know. And then I would just burst into wild tears driving. And I was okay to drive, but just these crazy tears of like, it was release of fear, you know, the body letting all of it go for me. And it happened over and over again, that day especially, and the next day some, and for the next few days. And I think that was very normal. Those reactions, that bodily reaction, that emotional sort of outpouring, reinforced what my brain intellectually knew. I'm mortal. Now it feels branded onto my body. The trauma factors that day, and you know, they're lessening now, but the fear of being alone, feeling physically terrible, the forethought of grief, as Wendell Berry puts it. There's a therapist named Irvin Yalom, and I'm going to talk about one of his books next week for Book Sunday, and I hope you'll tune in because it's a wonderful book. But one of the things he talks about he's a psychotherapist who deals particularly with death and the fear of death. And he just has such a good way of looking at it. And so one of the things that he really encourages is that when you have one of these events that brings you close to your mortality, he calls them awakening encounter, or what does he say? Awakening events. A lot of therapists call them boundary events because they push against that boundary where we've kept ourselves from thinking about our own mortality. And if we push through that, if we're pushed through that by an event, we might have an awakening encounter, what Yalom talks about. And in order to possibly do that, he encourages you to lean into the experience and think and process it. And so I have been. I have no real conclusions for you, but I will tell you a few conclusions I've come to for myself. As always, they are subject to change, interpretation, growth, and evolution. So, the first thing for me is that we humans need one another. That cry of, I cannot do this alone. This is a thing that I have to have help with, human help with, because I'm not Snow White and I cannot depend on the sparrows and the jackrabbits to come and dig my car out. I need a human. We need each other. I'll quickly mention a way that this was brought home to me in terms of the movement for Black Lives, and that is the case of Renisha McBride. It's an old case. It's from 2013, early in our litany of names, those we have lost to white panic and fear. She was in a car accident. She was dazed. It seems like she had a head injury to some witnesses who saw and encountered her because she kept wandering away from the car over the next 3 hours. Finally, she ended up on a man's front porch, in a white man's front porch in a largely white neighborhood. Radisha was black, and knocked on the door looking for help. The white homeowner was frightened and shot her through the screen door. She was killed instantly. And I thought, you know, she was in the desert too. She wasn't in the natural desert, but she was certainly in a hostile, at best indifferent environment. And when she reached out for help, it wasn't forthcoming. She did not survive her encounter with the wilderness. So that's one thing I was thinking about, is how much we need each other. Not just physically, although we do, we're so dependent on one another, but also we need one another to fix these things so that they never happen again. My vulnerability to the desert puts things into perspective. So for now, I'm reminded that as a person, I have some power, but with even one more person, I can do so much more. In some ways, this has given me a more realistic view of my own limits. I've been shown my true size, which is very, very small. And so I can, to an extent, let myself off the hook for not having racism solved by this week. Instead, I feel more committed to doing what I can with others, and I feel okay knowing that I'm doing anti-racist every day, anti-racist work every day. I haven't let myself, or you, off the hook, but this experience did teach me that I need to be more present in the moment and therefore meet people where they are. Stop trying to hold myself and others to impossible standards. So that's a good lesson. Another thing that I've come out of it is a gratitude that my body and my brain are still strong and resilient. I had good ideas. I had ideas about how to start a fire. I looked around and saw all the creosote bushes and dead wood around me and knew I could build a fire in the middle of the road with creosote, which would burn hot and have black smoke. So, I mean, I knew things about taking care of myself. I would have made it, I think. I mean, I don't know, but I think. And either way, it did just remind me, and all the scrambling around, digging out my car, I'm like, oh, I'm strong, I'm capable, I'm smart. And it's nice to be reminded of that when you are like literally facing possible, well, you know, death. So that was a relief. The third thing is that I really realized I'm gonna die someday. In the words of one of Dr. Yalom's patients, I suppose the strongest feelings came from realizing it would be me who will die, not some other entity like old lady me or terminally ill and ready to die me. No. Me. Corollary to that is that I feel there's no time to waste. And the corollary to that corollary is that I get to decide what is a waste and what is not, no one else, although I am accountable to the community as always. And finally, if there's no time to waste, it means I'd better pay attention to the present moment. I'm trying to be more here, now. It's made easier in some ways by the current garbage fire of the world, because I can't predict anything anyway, and it's best to just focus on getting through this moment. And it's also made difficult by the current garbage fire of the world, because sometimes I really want to run away, not always in healthy or productive ways. So, what I really feel like, and I want to just say quickly, I had some wonderful conversation with Jody Reed before she passed away this past week. And I would like to just say this part of this is for her. This is something of what I wrote in my journal recently. If we are brave and accompanied by wise and loving companions on our journeys, then we may push through these boundaries encounters to a true awakening in which the tenderest love for all of creation might blossom. Blossom not because of infinity's saving or stultifying grace, but in response to the promise and fact of transience. Mortality with all its trappings, death, aging, decay, but it has a Janus face. The Janus face of mortality is life. Life renewed in the rot and the ruin, springing up not despite the death below, but from it, of it, because of it. One and the same with it. From the atom's decay to the outflung ends of the cosmos, perhaps the dull hum of the universe's end. And if this is our heritage, if this is our ancestry, then this is all ours to wrestle with. We always succumb to death's seduction in the end. In our sleep or awake and aware, mortality holds us and knows us and takes us. This is the soil of Paul Tillich's great ground of being, rich with death, teeming with life, precious beyond words or claiming. Amen. So be it.
When the night has come and the land is dark and the moon is the only light we'll see, no, I won't be afraid. Oh, I won't be afraid, just as long as you stand by me. So darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Stand by me. If the sky that we look upon should tumble and fall, or the mountain should crumble to the sea, I won't cry, no, I won't shed a tear, just as long as you stand by me. And darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand now, stand by me, stand by me. Stand by me, stand by me. Whenever you're in trouble, won't you stand by me? Oh, stand by me. Whoa, stand now. Oh, stand.
By Kristen Collins. We give to remind ourselves how many gifts we have to offer. We give to remember we are part of something bigger than ourselves. We give because we believe in music and sacred space, in person, online, and in spirit. We give with the faith that together we have enough. At this time, I invite you to give to Community UU Church to continue our work together, including these online services. You can easily give by going to our website, communityuuchurch.org, and clicking on the blue Donate Now button. I know that's not the same as putting money in the plate. I like the feeling of putting money in the plate, and you don't get the same satisfaction, but the church has the same needs, and some of our congregation and our charities have greater need than ever. Your gifts are most gratefully received at this time of uncertainty.
At this time, let us extinguish the chalice with our words of closing. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Our benediction is a small meditation written by myself. A day and a night alone, cradled in the palm of the desert. Beautiful, yes, but barren for a creature like me. Small upon the face of the earth. The stars and sunrise distract and dazzle, but oh, what I would give for one other person's voice. The weight of human thought behind human eyes, and a hand reaching for mine. And when it comes, it links me to the chain of survival itself. Hands reaching out in help, back and back and back. Forward and forward into the only sure future. The only way out is through, and the only way through is together. Amen. Go in peace, but not just yet. Stay for our announcements.
Thank you for joining us today. Be sure to click on the subscribe button so you won't miss any of our Sunday services. Next week is our annual Book Sunday. Alyssa Church and Pastor Kris have chosen 2 outstanding books to share with us. The theme this year is journeys. I understand that one journey involves a traveling cat, and the other highlights a journey of death. So there's something for everyone here. To find out more about Community Church, visit us online at communityuuchurch.org. There you'll find out who we are and how we're living out our mission, even now. Although we are apart, we're together in community. See you next week.